How would you like to make $88,000 profit for 5 days of work? It seems kind of ridiculous, right? Hi, my name's Jared Krause. I'm the host of the Buying Online Businesses podcast, and in this episode, I'm speaking with Adam Smith, who is the co-founder of Niche Website Builders. He's bought, kept, sold, and flipped many sites, one of which he was able to make an $88,000 profit with just 5 days of work. And Adam is an incredible content business owner and strategist. In this podcast episode, Adam and I talk about why he buys sites instead of starting them from scratch alone, and how he likes to do both for different reasons. We also talk about why he liked the site that he bought before he actually decided to buy and flip it, and what opportunities actually saw in the site before he pulled the trigger to purchase it. We also talk about where he looks for websites for sale, where he buys them, where he bought this particular site that we're talking about in this episode, how much he bought that site for, what multiple he paid for it, and what was the monthly income of the site when he bought it as well. We also talk about in detail every single step that he took to grow the site and how it took him just 5 days of work to get the site from $2,000 a month to over $3,300 per month. We also talk about his overall profits from this flip, which is roughly around the $88,000 mark range if he was to sell it today or the time of recording. We also talk about how many sites Adam has in his portfolio, why he has that many sites, and what they do for him. We also talk about the mistakes that people make when rushing to buy a website and what it actually costs them. And then Adam also shares his advice, his 3 pieces of advice that he has for people wanting to build a portfolio of websites and are new to this, or have just one website business and want to build that into a portfolio. There's so much that we dig into in this episode. It's so damn valuable. We also talk about doing due diligence in this episode, and this is a vital part about buying a website business. So make sure you understand how to do your due diligence. If you don't know much about it or you want to become better at it, make sure you get my due diligence framework. You go to buyingonlinebusinesses.com/free resources, and you can download the framework that I use and all my clients use to buy websites that are already making a passive income. Let's dive into the episode. Do you want to build or grow your content website? Niche Website Builders have helped hundreds of people to take their content websites from a few $100s per month to over tens of thousands of dollars per month with crafted content creation, buying aged domains, and link building strategies. These strategies have helped people increase their traffic, authority, monthly earnings, and their website valuation too. Head to nichewebsite.builders/BOB/ to get 10% off any link building or 10% more from their content creation services. That's nichewebsite.builders/Bob/. I'll put a link in the description too. Adam, welcome back.
Thanks, Jared. Thanks for having me back. It's always a pleasure being a guest with you.
It's great having you as a guest because we get to have a great chat before. We get to have a great chat afterwards, before we hit the record buttons. But importantly for everybody listening is you come and bring the value. Last time you jumped on, there was, I think you made $18K profit in your website flip within a matter of a few months. Maybe it was actually weeks. I can't remember. Guys, check out that podcast.
About 30 days, yeah.
Yeah, it was a really good flip. And now you have another one, and I want to talk about this flip. I want to break it down. But before we do talk about the growth that everybody's just, wants to squeeze out of you, I want to talk about the acquisition of it all, because I'm curious. You've got the ability to go away and build something from scratch, right, with the team and stuff at Niche Website Builders.
Yeah.
And there's people that are on this thought process wondering, should I start one from scratch myself? And what route should I take, and what's the advantage of buying one? So yeah, I'm curious, what was your thought process, and why did you think about buying this one versus just starting it from scratch?
Sure. Yeah, it's a great question. And the honest answer is I do a bit of both. I do a lot of buying and selling, and I do some building, and starting from scratch. But I think it comes down to kind of tool set. I've got this, or skill set. Sorry, I've got the skill set where I can identify sites which either need some work or need something doing to them, or they've got quick wins essentially that can be exploited. And then depending on the site itself, I'll either fix those things or implement those quick wins and then keep it in my long-term portfolio. Or in this case, I'll look to fix them and then wait for the monthly average to increase to a level where I feel it's good to exit, and then I'll try and sell the site back on then. So it's not so much a case of, should you build versus should you buy. It's, do you have the skill set to identify sites that you can make money on, and then do you have the skill set
Hmm.
to go ahead and implement those and the team behind you to help implement, to make money essentially quicker. It's just a shortcut to making money, really.
Yeah, excellent. And that's something that people listening will pick up after they've bought their first business. Or if you're going to do some education before you buy your first business, usually you'll be able to identify those things as well. So tell me about the risks that you saw, because every business, everything we do in life has a risk. I want to talk about the risks and then I
Yeah,
want to move on to the opportunities. What are some of the things that you saw about, or yeah, about this site that there was some risk that you had to really think about and identify whether they are worth considering, and were you able to minimize
sure.
them or remove them and whatnot? Yeah,
Yeah, I mean, this website was a pure display ad, increasing the revenue from display ads play. There wasn't
cool.
really much else to it. And one of the biggest areas that I saw for improvement was the site was monetized through AdSense. And I was just going to switch it over to Ezoic, and that will be a big part of my quick wins. Now, in my experience, like 99% of sites will perform better on Ezoic than they would through AdSense, but there's still always the risk that you switch it over and it makes the same or even less. And the other risk is that the owner may have already put it into Ezoic, seen that, and then swapped it back to AdSense. So for this site, that was the major risk. The site had been steady for a long time, for a number of years actually, in traffic. So there was little risk of traffic. It had gone through several Google updates, but there was definitely risk around the monetization model.
I just, for everybody listening, and for you, I bought a site a while ago, did nothing with it. A content site, display advertising as well. And it's the same. I saw
Yeah,
the exact same thing with this. It was monetized by AdSense, and it
yeah,
was making enough to be on Mediavine, traffic that
yeah,
is. And I thought, "Phew, like that's, I could just buy this and chuck it straight on Mediavine." It got denied, and
right.
then I put it on Ezoic, and from
Mhm.
there there was some tech issues and not much traffic was going to it. It wasn't making much money. It was making more money through AdSense. And I was like, oh, this is, all right, I'll go back to AdSense. It's not the end of the world because I'm still going to make the same
Yeah,
amount of money for the multiple I purchased it for. Left the business for about 14 months and we did nothing with it. The traffic stayed the same. Well, we had a tech issue, so we lost a bit of traffic, and then that
yeah,
got fixed. Traffic just scaled back up to the same level, stayed the same, and then just recently I changed it over to Ezoic, and hey presto, we're making a lot more money just through that change
yeah,
with Ezoic, right? Like Ezoic does, and just the good things with Ezoic. Not that this is a plug on Ezoic, but they have some good SEO tools. What I like about Ezoic mostly is the support, really, because
hmm,
I can play dumb and ask questions as a rookie and just try and work out what would their best advice be. And this is what I do a lot of the time is I have a bit of knowledge in the space, but I like to just put myself as a student and get people's recommendation and then make up my own mind with what I already have. And I think that's the best way to go about getting advice and working out who's good at giving advice, right? So
yeah,
what do you
for
think about
sure.
Ezoic? Like, is that why do you see that 99% of sites would do better with Ezoic?
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Ezoic. Like I say, I don't want to turn this into a plug for Ezoic, but all of my sites are now with Ezoic. And as I've moved more sites or my sites into Ezoic, I move up the premium tier level.
Mm,
And I know some people have an issue with paying up front for adverts, but I've always made money with Ezoic Premium. I'm on a very high tier level now, so sometimes it almost makes sense for me to buy other display ad sites and move them into my premium account to take advantage of the level that I'm on with the premium setting now. Um, you mentioned some
yeah.
tools there. One of the things I did with this site, and I think it's a small part, but it's still an important part, is I used Ezoic Leap to increase the site speed and pass web core vitals. Prior, when I bought
Yes.
it, the site was really slow. and it shouldn't have been because it was a very lightweight site. It wasn't
Mm,
very graphics heavy. There weren't many images, but I think it was just AdSense and it just wasn't optimized for display ads. So
yeah.
yeah, I like Ezoic for that too. Why I think they make more money than AdSense? I think it's because they have access to Google AdX or Ad Exchange. It's like a AdSense on steroids essentially, and also
Yeah.
I think AdSense still pays on or part of the revenue is made up on a cost per click basis, whereas with Ezoic, it's pretty much all based on impressions. So I don't really care if people come to the site and click the adverts because I get paid either way as long as they see them. And then you
Mm.
can optimize your placeholders so they stay in view longer and they stay in the sticky sidebar and they auto refresh. And you've got the little banner at the bottom and they auto refresh. So with Ezoic, I feel there's more opportunity to optimize your placeholders as well for more revenue.
Yeah, I mean, optimizing placeholders or ad placements, whatever you want to call them, in AdSense is it can be done, but auto ads is just not as good as Ezoic. Zoic's ad, it is superior in that sense. Not that we're plugging Ezoic; everybody has to do what's right for them and make the best call. But it's worked for us, so
Yeah,
it's a good thing. So it's worth talking about, right? So the site that you bought one. I'm curious. This is a big thing for people listening that are wanting to buy a site. You've done on a lot of businesses. You've looked at a lot of businesses. Uh,
yeah,
for people listening, they're not going to be able to take this as though that they can do the same amount of work and look at the same amount of sites and buy a site within the same time frame as you, because you've got a
sure.
lot more experience. But what's the gauge like? You've bought so many sites before. How long do you spend looking for sites? Where are you looking at purchasing them from, and how long do you spend on your due diligence, sort of thing? Just for a gauge for us.
Sure. So there's a number of different places I look. This one was actually from Flipper, and I don't I don't often buy sites from Flipper. To be honest, it's very rare that I would buy a site from Flipper. I feel there's a lot of sites on there,
Mm-hmm.
but not all of them. Lots of them don't pass the sniff test, shall we say? I think on Flipper.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's a couple of marketplaces I look. Obviously, Empire Flipper, but they're at the higher end of the scale in terms of price and cost. They're also at the higher end of valuation. Typically, they're 40, 45x, sometimes even up as high as 50x now. Which, as an investor, we make some of our money on the purchase because we buy it at a good price, right? You can't make
Mm-hmm.
those kind of
Mm-hmm.
valuations. I also look through Investors Club and Motion Invest. So obviously I'm set up on I get their emails when they add new listings. I just go and check them out. But I've got a very specific set of criteria that I'm looking for. So when these new listings come out, I won't spend a ton of time. I'm looking for, is it monetized primarily through display ads? And then I'll go and have a look at, my literal like couple of point checklist. And if it passes the initial kind of sniff test, then I'll go deeper and have a look and start doing some due diligence. But really speaking, I'm not spending a ton of time every week looking for sites. I'm looking for ones which have oversized opportunity for where I can make lots of return rather than oh, I could make a little bit of money with this one, or if I dig deep enough I might find something here. It's that
Mm.
old I'm waiting for the right one to come, and typically what you'll find is it's like buses. You'll wait maybe 4 or 5 months and nothing will come, and then 2 or 3 might come at the same time. So you just need to be patient and stick to your criteria.
Oh, I like it. That's great advice. Be patient, stick to your criteria. Because I've had this many conversations, or a lot of conversations with newbies that are like, I can't find the business that I want. And they've been in the membership for 2 months and they're like, or 3 months, and they're like, this can't work for me. And it's a
Yeah,
shame because, sometimes people give up right when they're at the precipice of achieving their goal, right? And
yeah,
it's a shame to see people go, oh, I've tried this for 4 or 5 months and I didn't find a site that was good enough. But hey,
yeah,
like an extra couple of weeks, you could have just seen three that are like bang, bang, bang. Like, which one do I choose
yeah,
from? Right. And I'm not just talking about people in the community. I'm talking about people outside the community that have tried this for 6 months and they said, look, can't do it. What do you have
yeah.
to say to them about that?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of this story will tell it all. I've only lost money on a handful of sites over the last couple of years. The one that
Mm,
really sticks in my mind was it was outside of my criteria, and I thought I would buy it, and then I would only keep it for a very short period of time, and I would flip it. but it didn't meet my usual criteria. And I bought it, and then within literally like 2 or 3 weeks of closing the deal, it got hit in a Google update, and I still own the site
Oh,
now, and I'm going to lose money on the site when I sell it.
mm,
It's going to be a loss, and it's one of a handful. Like there's not many sites I've lost money on, and that one I lost money on, and it's because I went outside of my criteria. I would have never have looked at it typically, but I was going through a bit of a dry spell of other deals, and I saw the opportunity for I'll keep it for a couple of months and make a little bit of money on it, and then it just came back to bite me in the ass. So yeah, just that taught me not to do that anymore.
that's a great lesson for us to learn from. Yeah,
Yeah,
like just, oh, I can't get it. I'm going to force it. And
yeah.
sometimes that can end up in not the best situation, right?
I was
I also
literally
want to
looking at the
highlight
numbers
before
this
we move.
month, and I think
Sorry, go on.
I've owned the site now for just over 13 months, and I paid $35,000 for it. Um, and if I sold it now, I think I would get about 16 or 17,000 for it. So with the revenue it's made, I'm down like $10,000 to $15,000 on that site.
Yeah.
It's a painful
Yeah.
lesson.
Yeah. The thing is that you've bought so many and done well with so many, so it can kind of you overall
Oh yeah,
positive, but it's still it's one of those things that you just wish hadn't happened, right? Obviously.
exactly.
Um,
That's right. It could have been avoided if I just stuck to my own rules, essentially.
yeah, yeah. And so talking about premium listings with some brokers and then some that have better multiples. I think the off market, like buying them through, groups like your own, is a
Yeah,
good thing for people that are buying sites under the 50K range because it helps many people to see that you don't need to go with a high multiple premium listing from a bigger broker. And I think that's good. It's sort of putting a cap on those bigger brokers from going too high in their valuation because what I
yeah,
see is they've got a brand. They get to pick the businesses that they want to sell on the premium
yeah,
ones, which is fair because they built their brand and I understand that. But they can test the waters in how high they can go with selling it for a higher multiple, and
yeah,
that can really set the industry standard, which can be hard for people that are first coming to it. And something
yeah,
that I mentioned to everybody is like, look, I think this is worth X amount based on the information
yeah,
that you've provided me. Um, and you can get a superior site elsewhere, but it just takes so much more time to find, right? Like that's the piece is
yeah.
like, are you willing to pay premium, cut off the time and not have to hunt as hard? Or are you going to sift through the sort of like if you're looking through Flipper, you're going to sift through all the stuff to get
Yeah.
the rare find.
I also find
Yeah.
we can use that to our advantage as well when it comes time to negotiating for sites through like if we find off market sites through the Facebook group. I mean, a great
Mm,
tactic that I always use is kind of do your due diligence first, and then you get to the negotiation and the valuation part. And by that point, you're already in the door, you're already talking, they're already open to the idea of selling to you, and then you put your offer forward, and then you go back and forth a little bit, and then at the end, you always then say, well, I'll give you X amount, which is maybe 20% lower or 15% lower than they're proposing, and you can say that's what you would
mm.
pay a broker anyway. So like, let's cut them out, and I'll pay that, and you can usually get at least a 10% discount on kind of where you've agreed anyway, just with that one little. Well, you would pay it to a broker, so let's kind of split the difference
Yeah,
maybe.
yeah, of course, of course. So tell us about more about the site. So, how much do you pay for the site if you're open to sharing it? What was its
Yeah.
average monthly net profit? Maybe even the niche it's in, if that's valuable for us to know.
Yeah, sure. So I paid $60,000 for the site. That was based on a 35 times multiple of the past 12 months average. So the site had been very steady for a long
Cool.
time, several years. So there was no ups and downs. It was averaging just under $2,000 a month, essentially. And I bought it through, like I say, through Flipper, and then we used escrow.com as the middleman to do the transaction with. And we used a 7-day inspection period, and the site's in the technology space. And I usually would stay away from sites in the technology space, mainly because the content typically doesn't tend to be evergreen. Like what's a good laptop today is
Mm-hmm.
probably not a good laptop in 6 months to a year, for example. But this was informational based, where the content typically
Yeah.
is evergreen. So, yeah. That's the niche.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Cool. Congrats. I would typically tell people to stay away from that niche as well, and I've got many videos in my community around that. But if you can make it work, you can make it work, right? Um,
Yeah.
Cool. So it's more informational than affiliate type. Buy this product, have to keep changing the articles every 6 months, right? So that's a
Yeah.
win. All right, and so the biggest thing I guess that you identified is you can make more revenue through a better ad network.
Hmm.
So you went over to Ezoic. What are some of the other things that you did that you are these things that you saw prior to purchasing the business, or these things that you saw when after you bought the business through the inspection period? And then what were those things?
Yeah, sure. So these were things that I saw prior. So it very much helps to have a checklist of things that you can tick off. And then once you purchased, it very much helps to have a checklist of your quick wins essentially. And for your listeners who listened to the previous podcast that you mentioned before, the list is pretty much exactly the same. It's the same issues, it's the same things that I implemented in this side, just the numbers are on a slightly bigger scale. So the play for this was to increase display ad revenue, obviously. So the first thing I did was move it from AdSense over to Ezoic. And then I implemented a couple of on-page changes. So these things took me about 5 days from start to finish to implement. Some were really quick and some took a couple of days. But essentially, the first thing I did was increase the font size. So it was on the Astra theme. Very easy to go into themes and customize and change the font size. And I took it up to 22 pixels or 22 points. So it's fairly large. And I also increased
What
the
was it?
line height.
Do you know?
I think it was 18.
Okay, cool.
Um,
Sorry to cut you
and I
off there.
increased that's okay. I increased the line height slightly as well. And basically, what that does is it just means there's more scrolling for the user when they're on the site, and typically more scrolling means more placeholders. And if you're on the desk viewing the site on desktop as well, you've got the sticky sidebar and the sticky bottom placement. Those auto refresh after 15 or 20 seconds. So the more time someone spends scrolling that one page, the more adverts you can show them, and the more revenue you can make essentially. So that was my first quick win. The site didn't have any images on there at all. Not that I think adding images on their own, or not that I think adding images on their own is a massively important factor. But again, all it does is break up the page to allow more placeholders and get people to scroll longer. So I'm a big fan of the 80/20 rule. I went through analytics, downloaded the top 20% of the pages that are driving 80% of the traffic. Usually it's only a handful of pages on most sites. And then I added several images to each of those posts. So the scrolling was longer.
Awesome. Awesome.
The site didn't have a table of contents. So I use a plugin called Lucky WP Table of Contents to automatically insert table of contents. And I think that's important to
On
create
each
jump
post, you
links for
mean?
Google. For each post, yeah.
Yeah, great.
Um,
Sorry, I cut you off again. What was the next one?
That's okay. No, I was just saying, I think the table of contents is really important and it's an overlooked factor that most people or some people miss. It creates jump links for Google. So, and you can see this in your search console. Sometimes if you go in there and you click on one of your top pages in the performance report, you'll see sometimes, or if you've got a table of contents, they'll have a little hashtag at the end of the URL in there. And that's basically where someone has, or Google has served up an answer. Typically it's a snippet, and you click the link and you're actually taken to that section on the page by the jump link, and that comes from the table of contents. So this site didn't have it, so it was a very quick win. um, I added some FAQs to the end of each pieces of content just to make the piece of content a little bit longer and a little bit more in depth. um, I would do that for any site, but this site in particular, it's the type of content that it's very generic informational based. So even though it's tech info, it's very generic tech info. It's hard to make your content different to someone else's because it's pure informational about something. But a good way to do that and make yours stand out and be better is to add FAQs. And easiest way to do that is to grab your FAQs from the people also ask box whenever you search for the topic. Just literally put the title of the post into Google and pull out three or four questions from the people also ask box. Interesting note on that as well. I don't know if you've seen this yet. I've yet to see it in the wild, but I see on mobile results, Google are now starting to include what people search for next box in addition to people also asked, which I think will be interesting because you could almost follow the user journey then. If someone's interested in X, this is what they searched for next. So that's something to keep an eye out for and play around with in the next couple of weeks.
It'd be really cool to have that at the bottom of each post, right? Where you have, the next three things that they're going to search for next, but your own articles. Like people also like,
Exactly.
or people search for next, or people go to next these 3 to 4 or 8 articles, and have them on your own site, and kind of do
Yeah.
what Google's doing on your own page, which
Yes.
increases the time on page and bounce rate, or decreases bounce rate. Sorry.
Exactly. And then the only other thing was increase site speed using Ezoic Leap, like we mentioned earlier. So that was
Yeah.
literally my quick win toolbox for this website. Implementing those things took about 5 days, essentially.
Cool. So I'm gonna just go through them quickly in my head
Yeah.
and spill them out on the microphone, and then I'm gonna dive
Yep.
into some of, or each one of those things a little bit. So over to Ezoic. Use Ezoic Leap for the site speed optimization. Increase that. Change font. Increase line size, more space. Once you got your top pages, added images, FAQ section, table of contents. And I want to ask, just for people listening, how, like, the 80-20, the Pareto principle, getting your top pages. This is what I mentioned to people in my community, is like, if you're going to grow your site, work on the things that are already making more money. That's the business will tell you what it needs if you know how to listen to
Yeah.
it and get the right feedback. So how many articles or pages are we talking? Was it just, all right, let's start with the top 10 that you can just literally get from Google Analytics, or was it, more? And if so, why?
Yeah, so in this case, I think it was between 20 and 30
Okay.
pieces of content. And literally, I go into Google Analytics, go to behavior and landing pages, go to the last 60 days or last 90 days, however long you want to set it, and download it. And literally, you can just highlight, because it shows you the traffic. Just go through there and highlight whatever comes out at 80%. And usually, it'll be about 20% of your posts. Almost always, it's uncanny.
Excellent. Excellent. And so how many posts does this site have when you purchased it?
It's got around 180, I think.
Yeah, cool. Okay. And what's next?
Yeah, so this site, it's not a long term hold for me, so it's not a long term keeper for my portfolio. Primarily because it's in the technology space, and like I said at the start, I typically don't like to be in that space long term. So I'm probably going to try and sell it soon. It's at the point now where I've owned it for February will be the 6 month, so I've got a nice new 6 month average that I can go to market with. That's significantly higher than before, and then realize some of that capital, and then keep my gunpowder ready for the next opportunity that comes up that meet my criteria again.
Awesome. The dying question is, what is the average monthly net profit now? Say
So
February's not always the best month in in the cycle, right, of a content display ad business. But
sure.
what are we looking at in terms of monthly net profit?
So it's increased to around 3,300 now, from just under 2,000
Amazing.
when I bought it.
Yeah, so an extra 1,300, which will get you an
Mhm.
extra, times that by 35, hopefully 38, if we can get that or more.
Yeah,
Yeah, excellent, excellent. So what are
yeah.
we
So
looking at? You've done the maths, obviously.
when I'm trying to sell a site, I use a 40x multiple at the moment.
Yep,
So at a 40x multiple, that comes out to 132,000, and I paid 60 for it. And it's also generated just over 16,500 in revenue since I owned it as well. So total profit of just under $90,000.
congrats. Awesome, man.
I'm
So
tempted to keep it a little bit longer, so it's a full six-figure profit, but we'll see what happens.
yeah, that's it. It's pretty close to it, isn't it? It's pretty close. You
It
can get that
is.
up to the five k range and get close to that 5k range per month. So tell me a little bit more about your investment strategy in terms of how many sites you're looking at having at any one time. And the reason I ask this is because I think having focus is important, and I've been through the position of buying multiple businesses at one time, And it
Yeah,
wasn't content sites either. Content sites are far more passive than, say, owning two e-commerce businesses and a membership
yeah,
business. Just, and trying to travel and live a lifestyle as well. That was a tough
yeah,
time for me. I was a young, hungry, I'm just gonna crush it and buy as many as I could. I've
yeah,
learned a lot from that, and that's changed for me. But I'm curious to hear your opinion on, how many sites do you want to have in your portfolio at any one time? How long do you keep them for usually, and when do you sell them, and how do you? Yeah, let's
yeah.
let's open up that can of worms.
Sure. So at any one time, I've got kind of anything from 10 to 15 sites in my portfolio. Some of them are long-term holds. Like I
Hmm.
say, I want to keep them for the long term. So they're not necessarily in there for a flip. In terms of how many I'm actively working on to improve on the short term and flip them, it really depends on, what comes along. I think maybe in the last 6 months, I've bought one, two, three. I bought four sites in the last 6 months, mainly because they just meet my criteria and they came up. But I may very well go another 6 months without buying any sites if
Yeah,
none come up. So it's not a case of how many do I want and I'll pass on good deals. It's a case of is the good, are there good deals out there? Do these sites meet my criteria? Do I want them in my portfolio? And if I do, then I'll buy them. I don't mind if that goes up to 20 sites as long as I can manage them. And I think I'm in a different situation than maybe some of your audience in that I own an agency where I've got a team around me that can help and support if need,
yeah,
and can write content. So I'm not
yeah.
sat there writing content for 10, 15 sites. um,
Could you
Otherwise, it
imagine?
would be totally unmanageable. Yeah, that's the whole reason we started the agency
Yeah,
because I was in that position where I had my portfolio, and it got to the point where I needed help, and I didn't have a team around me,
yeah.
and that's the reason we started the business. So
And so those ones that you're holding longer, I presume these are the ones that you're publishing content on regularly to increase traffic, which will increase revenue. Is that right?
yes, most of them, apart from one, and I don't mind sharing this one because I share it with everyone. It's about foxes, and it's a very narrow niche. I've covered literally everything you can write about foxes. There's literally nothing else to write. It's the de facto authority site for foxes,
Okay,
essentially.
cool.
Um, but I like it because it's defensible and the site has covered everything. It would take another site quite a bit of content to cover the same. So that
Mm,
one's in there for a different reason. I don't think it would ever grow, but it's been super steady, super stable, and I feel it's going to be hard to knock off uh,
excellent.
where it is. But the rest, yeah, I'm adding content.
Yeah, yeah, cool. So, because people listening, they're like, you know, you've got a few that you'll buy that are quick wins. You hold it for, say, 6 months, like this one, and get rid of it and not add content. And then you got other ones, and you own a content agency, basically. And then you have other ones that you like, cool, you could do your quick wins to it, and then you hold it for a longer term and then add the content, probably, you know, add backlinks and stuff like that as well, right?
Yeah, exactly. And those longer term hold ones, I try and base them around niches that are very expansive. So I have another one that's in the business template space,
Mm,
and I can keep creating content almost indefinitely in that space. There's so many different facets of business and so many different subsections of templates within each of those areas that I can. Yeah, I'm almost never going to run out of content ideas for that site.
yeah, excellent, excellent. So, for those listening that are very new to buying a site or they've just bought their first site, what advice would you give to them for starting to build their portfolio? Obviously, not be in the position where you're at. Just try to get to 15
Yeah.
as quickly as possible without a team and support. But yeah, what sort of 1 to 3 things would you give to them so they don't make it harder than it needs to be?
Sure, but I think the first one is just buy right. So, like we said at the start, don't be impatient. Even if it takes a couple of months, it's better to buy your first one and have a good experience buying the right site rather than
Mm,
buying the wrong site because you've got some money in your pocket burning a hole, and you end
yeah,
up with something which will turn you off the industry because it's such a great industry to be in and it's such a great investment asset class to be in. You don't want that first experience to be tainted. I don't think.
yeah,
The The second one is depending on how much cash flow that first site buy gets you. Work on it and work on it and work on it until it cash flows enough so you can save for another one. I'm a big fan of the snowballing method, where site number one pays for site number two, and then site number one and two pay for site number three. And even though it takes a bit longer, I think doing it that way, it's very sustainable. And then even if one site gets hit, maybe an update or something, you've got that ball rolling then. So go slow and go steady and use the snowballing method. And then I think the third one then is one which maybe people don't tend to talk about too often, or I've not heard too often, is know when to sell. Like another one of my biggest learning experiences was a couple of years back when I had was trying to sell another one of my sites in the six-figure range. And honestly, we put it up for sale, and we couldn't agree. We had an interested buyer. We couldn't agree on the price, and we were like eight or $10,000 apart on price, like next to nothing.
Mm.
I was stubborn and said no, and then a Google update happened, and the site got hit, and
Oof.
I ended up selling the site for a lot less than six figures. Um, and I learned from that if the deal is to be made, like there's no point haggling over the pennies, really. So if you're going to sell the site and you're happy to sell it and you've taken it as far as you can, then yeah, don't let the pennies get in the way of the next deal and having some money in your pocket to go after it.
I think that's excellent to think about. The last two are so solid. Like touching on not haggling for price and just getting out. I think the opportunity cost is something that we need to consider when we're selling. Is like, all right, have
Yeah,
you gone to the end of the line with how much energy you can put into the site and even attention on just owning it, let alone
yeah,
rowing it, just owning it and letting it be passive? Has that, would you be better off creating more energy and excitement moving into something else by just taking a little bit less money, right? Like
yeah,
I'm big
for
on,
sure.
I love investing and making money. It's great, but I'm also big on less stress and doing what fulfills you and makes your life better. And sometimes we are too focused on the dollars. I've been there, but it can stuff you up, right? Really can.
Yeah,
Yeah. Same thing as about the money burning in the pocket. Like for the last few years, I've had money burning in my pocket and been wanting to rush into things. And I'm so glad I haven't, because these other investments that I'm making now, it's that much better, that much more less
yeah.
stress because I waited for the right things to come along. Like,
Yeah, and I find as well it's all I put those deals out of my mind as quickly as possible because it's so easy for you to then keep thinking and overexcite, and then in your brain you think, oh well, okay, that one thing doesn't meet my criteria, but that's fine, and you keep thinking about it, and it become in your head it becomes a better and better deal, even though it's probably the worst deal ever because you keep thinking about it. So put it out of your head,
yeah,
don't think about it, move on to the next one.
it's where people go, I'll do my due diligence and I need to sell the business to myself, right? And they
Yeah,
end up being in their head and selling the business to themselves when the opposite is
yeah,
true. You actually need to prove the business is a bad investment. And that's
yeah,
when sometimes people come to me with their business and they've sold it to themselves and I give them some advice and they're like, they've sold it to themselves so hard that what I have to say doesn't register at all, which can be
yeah,
scary. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, amazing, amazing. Congrats on your purchase. Congrats on this flip. Congrats on the portfolio you've built and everything you've done, Adam. It's great to have you on. We'll be doing more of these. And where can we send people to find out more about either your portfolio and the agency?
Sure. So the agency is Niche Website Builders. So the website's nichewebsite.builders. We've got two Facebook groups. One of them might be interesting if you are looking for businesses to buy, just because it's called the Niche Website Flippers group. It's full of people who are buying and selling sites. And then obviously I'm on Facebook. So if anybody wants to connect, then just shoot me a friend request. I'm pretty accessible. I'll answer most questions. So yeah, they're the best ways to reach out: website, Facebook group, or Facebook.
There you go, guys. There'll be links to that in the show notes. As always, Adam, thanks so much for coming on.
Thanks. Thanks, Jared. Appreciate your time, man.
Those who are listening that are thinking about buying a site, re-listen to this again. There's so many little golden nuggets that you probably may have missed out on. It's like reading a book. The second time you pick it up, there's some great things that you will realize that you didn't get the first time. Also, for those who are looking at buying or have friends that are looking at buying sites, please share this podcast episode with them. It's insanely valuable. They're going to get a lot from it. Yes, it helps grow the channel, but it's going to help them as well. So thank you so much for listening, guys. See ya.
Hey YouTube watcher, if you thought that video was good, you should check out this video here on the 2 best types of websites beginners should buy. Or check out my playlist on how I made my first 100K from buying websites and how to do due diligence. Check it out. It's an awesome playlist. You'll enjoy it.